And we are live. Folks, I don't want to blow your minds here. We're coming in hot and Doc Eisenhower, Doc Holiday Dyna is leading us off, not our smooth velvety voiced man of control Matt Morris. He is out this week with a case of having a baby. Not himself, it's 2024 and all, but his wife went the traditional route. The wife is having the baby, and it's a healthy baby, and we're very happy for him, healthy baby boy. But he's so funny. He actually said that he was when he had the baby, or is about to they were about to have him. Matt said, "Oh, dude, because it's Tuesday, so I should be good by next week." And having a child myself, having been through it, I was like, "We'll see when the time comes." And as you can see here, we have someone who is not Matt. We have Scout the Statlines, Owen Hurd. He's been on the podcast before. I am going to have to try to function as the host today, and today we are going to be covering the 2024 MLB Draft, which is a lot of fun. Full disclosure, I just have so much going on in life, and I'm trying to keep on top of all the different prospects when it comes to baseball and the major leagues. Shout out to all the fellows like Owen and other folks on the Twitter X. It's X. I'm going X now. And y'all.
I miss Twitter though.
Yeah, it sounds nice.
Because you can't call it tweets anymore, can you?
Oh, and in case someone missed the episode where we first introduced you, say hi to the folks at home.
Hi everyone, my name's Owen Hurd with Scout the Statline. I run down on the farm every Saturday. So if you have not checked that out, give it a check out. We just released another one this past weekend about my second half hot takes. One of them's already busted because Connor Griffin went in the top 10 picks. I thought no high schoolers were going to go in the top 10 picks, so already off to a bad start. But there's some interesting ones in there. We'll see how those age. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Doc, and looking forward to talking about the draft.
Yeah, man. So this is fun stuff. I just think it's so important for fantasy purposes. This is look at this cannon I got today. What do you think about that, buddy?
Oh yeah, that's a good looking scar right there.
It's like Genghis Khan by Gurkha.
Wow.
So yeah, you're like, I don't know what that means, but it sounds amazing.
It looks like a nice cigar. Yeah, can't say I'm a cigar guy, but it looks fancy.
Yes. Yeah. So for the draft, so I'm the guy, I know I'm just going to play catch up. And for me, it matters so much where they land. It just, if you go to the Angels, you're in the MLB tomorrow. If you go to, the Braves as a pitcher, I'm like, your stock's a lot higher than some other places. So, and then you look for signing bonuses, things like that. What were your thoughts? Well, I guess that's what we'll start. Folks at home, we are going to cover picks 1 to 10 today. And we'll see if we have time for some other players. We're going to break down the players and how they might fare for fantasy analysis, fantasy purposes. But for now, Owen, tell us a bit about your thoughts that you had going into the draft.
Yeah. So my thoughts going into the draft, I was pretty confident, or I would say at least 90% confident Bazana was going to go 1-1. So I was kind of not surprised there. But I think I did like a first-year player draft rankings pre-draft. I think Condon in Colorado definitely retakes that number 1 spot for me in first-year player drafts. That's just an absolute dream landing spot for a guy of his power. So I thought it was going to be Bazana, Condon, 1, 2 in some order. I was very surprised to see Burns go number 2 overall to Cincinnati. I was like, once Bazana was gone, I thought Condon was a surefire pick there. I'm curious if there was something with the signing bonus there that they disagreed on, or something that dropped him 1 spot. But Colorado for Condon is just an absolute dream landing spot. He takes that 1-1 spot in first year player drafts for me. I will say Christian Moore went a lot higher than I was expecting, and landing at the Angels, he'll probably be up by September. So he definitely falls off. I had him as a first round grade. He probably falls off that list for me. Trey Yasavage was another guy I had with a back end of the first round grade, but I mean, Toronto is, for opportunity wise, that's a great landing spot for him, but in terms of his development, I'm not so sure there. Let's see. I'm trying to think who else got picked.
Let's just start it off. I feel like there's so much we could talk. We could just accidentally get into guys at random here. So let's just go in order then. Let's go to see, Matt Morris would have us completely streamlined. We wouldn't be. We're just going to be shooting from the hip here, folks, which makes sense. You got Doc Holliday Dana here.
Yeah.
Let's do Travis Bazana. He goes first overall to the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah.
What do you think about that pick?
Honestly, I like the pick. I don't think you can really go wrong there. I think he can be a 2020 guy. He's got 5-tool upside. The defense is there. He's got some good speed too. There's no questioning the hit tool. A lot of pop for his size. I believe he was one of the home run leaders, and he's like, I think he's like what, 5'10", maybe 5'11", definitely not.
It says he's 6 foot 200 pounds.
Wow,
it actually says he's 6 foot 199 pounds. It's like, come on, guys.
Yeah,
we can round up one. I'm sure
yeah,
he'll have a burger.
okay, yeah.
It'll be fine.
We'll round up one, but yeah, I like the even though you could argue that the last thing Cleveland needs is another lefty bat. I'm perfectly fine with the pick. He was kind of the guy I expected to go 1-1. I think he's got a fine mix of floor and upside, and I like the pick for Cleveland. I think it was just a slam dunk pick.
Yeah, it's so cool that he's Australian too. He kind of looks like I saw him. I'd seen the name, I'd seen the numbers, I'd seen them in uniform even, but seeing these guys outside of the game for the first time, a lot of them yesterday. And Bazana, he's got like a big face, and he kind of looks like Bobby Witt a little bit. But it was so funny. He didn't know how to. It's funny you get a little glimpse into their personalities. And Bazana could not speak. He's just like so in shock, which is amazing because a lot of people like yourself thought he was going number 1 overall, but he still didn't know what to think about in the moment, which was a cool, very humble guy, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. He's actually the highest drafted Australian-born player of all time in the MLB. So
well, he'd have to.
Only one that I think ever go in the first round too. So we got it. That's big. Big moment for him. Probably just a little overwhelmed there.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I would say that the number 1 overall pick, it'd be hard to be drafted any higher than that, huh? He'd have to at least be tying the other Australians.
Oh, yeah.
A little dry humor for you folks at home. We're going to go to number 2 here. The Reds sounds like they surprised Owen. I think they surprised a lot of people. I didn't see it coming either, but I do have some thoughts on this one. We'll go to you first, though. Chase Burns, the right-handed pitcher. This is just for the folks at home. If you don't know who Chase Burns is, it's kind of almost a generic name, but his profile is like nothing but generic. This is a black fella born in Italy, raised in the South, the American South, and he just whips triple-digit heat. So this is not your generic guy. This is like a very cool story, and I'd love to learn more about him. What do you think about the pick in general, Owen?
Yeah, so I don't hate the pick at all. I think he was definitely the best. I think he was the best arm in the class for me. Potential probably 3+ pitches with his fastball, curveball, slider. Fastball, as you said, can reach actually 102. Operates primarily 97 to 99. The strikeouts are there. I think it was like 17 K per 9 at Wake Forest in his senior year there. Just ridiculous upside. And I can understand. I understand why the Reds would kind of go that route. I don't really view the pick as a reach. Just kind of one that kind of surprised me, given Condon still could have been a dream fit in Great American Ballpark. That's the most home run friendly park in the league, I believe. But I think if there's any guy you could justify taking over him, it would be Chase Burns. Yeah,
and I agree. It's like, I think because it's a hitter's park, we think, oh, a crazy power hitter. What could he do there? Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
true. But you can also look at it from the other perspective of, well, maybe we don't need the powery guy, the biggest muscly guy, because just a strong hitter, just a decent hitter will become a strong bat, or be capable of elevating their power there. And then you look at their rotation. Hunter Green's coming out pretty strong right now, but I still think I think Green would be maybe better served as a strong number 2, and Chase Burns appears to have the guy. He can be the guy, and that's the deal when you have a hitter's park. You need to be able to prevent the runs from the other team piling up on you.
Yeah, and I think when you look at their potential rotation, potentially even as soon as maybe mid 2025. Chase Burns, Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Rhett Lauder, Andrew Abbott. That's a dangerous 5 right there. And then you look at all the young bats they have, Noelvi Marte, Matt McClain. If they can add, maybe the outfield is definitely an area of need. They'll have Matt McClain coming back soon. Maybe they can get Christian Encarnacion Strand back on track. That's a fun young team to watch right there. And that five right there that I just mentioned, a starting five, that could go up against some of the best in the league.
Yeah, and you can't help but I just had this thought right now that how much is Chase Petty and Connor Phillips and their bumps in the road they're hitting this year. How much does that play into it? Because those guys were expected to take a huge step this year, and especially with Phillips, you're having some concerns.
Yeah, I'm less worried about Chase Petty. I think he's one of my favorite arms in their system, and I think he's one of the youngest qualified arms at his level, if I'm remembering that correctly. So I'm kind of less worried about that. We know what he can do. Phillips, I'm definitely concerned there. 25, I believe, and can't even. And he's got I think it was like a 6.5 plus ERA in AAA. Just not a good sign. So, and then you look at the struggles that Rhett Lauder has been having in AA. I can understand. Maybe there was a little bit concern there, but I think from a talent perspective, Burns is a guy that I think he was the best arm in the class, and I think it's not. I don't completely dislike the pick. It's just one that it did catch me a little bit off guard.
All right. Well, we'll see how it all turns out. Let's go to the Rockies next. We got your boy Charlie Condon. Is that how you say it? Condon? I was always like Condon, Condone. But
I think it's Condon. Condon, I believe. Yes.
All right. What do you think about it?
Absolutely love the pick. I expected Condon to be gone by their pick, and then I would have hated for them to end up with Chase Burns or Hagen Smith at that pick. I think Caglianone would have been a reach there. So to get just Condon to just fall into their lap at 3, Colorado has got to be ecstatic. This is a guy with 40 home run power, and then he's in a hitter friendly environment like Coors. He's got probably one of the best hit tools in the class. Just an absolute tank of a human. Just I think it's a great fit. Slam dunk pick for Colorado, and just you can never underestimate the power of Coors. I think that's really going to be a landing spot that really maximizes his upside.
Now, did you watch the draft live yesterday?
I didn't, honestly. I was following kind of pick by pick on Twitter.
These guys are so funny. Sure. Twitter X. These guys are so
Twitter/X.
These guys are so funny, man. These analysts on the MLB Network. They called like 5 guys in a row. Every power hitter, all these power hitters that you'd see go off the board here.
Aircraft carriers, the one I heard.
Aircraft carriers. Yeah. I'm like, is that a thing now? I've never heard anyone say that before, but apparently everyone's an aircraft carrier.
I think I heard it 2 picks in a row with Condon and Kurtz. I think is where I was seeing that it was both used, but
it was cracking me up, man. I was loving it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I think that's a very, very fun pick. Condon's gonna be the ultimate either. It's gonna prove one of 2 things: that talent can punch through even in an organization that hasn't been doing a great job of development. Or if he doesn't work out, you have to rip apart. You might already want to do it, but you want to really if there's the owner of the Rockies, if Condon can't hit in Coors, if you can't get some power out of this kid up in that elevation, you're gonna have to go ahead and tear apart your development, and just whoever the heck's in charge of anything, you just got to start over, man, because this organization they need something like this.
I'm not even looking that way yet, honestly. I mean, this is a guy who just led Division I in average slugging, OPS, homers, extra base hits, and total bases. Just, I really have little concerns about his ability to translate professionally and kind of with that part. But I agree. There's definitely a lot kind of hinging on this pick. Colorado definitely not the best history of development. A little bit better for hitters, but I think there's definitely a lot of pressure on them to hit with this pick because, Jones has kind of taken a step back in year 2. Tavar, who I really like, I think he's arguably at best legit with a major flaw in his game, that being his swing decisions and his approach at the plate. The rest of that lineup, they kind of need that. They need that, really impact hitter.
Yeah.
And, that many expect Condon to be. And I think if he does fall short of that, there's definitely going to be the questions, reasonable questions arising, as you mentioned, kind of, what do we need to fix with our development? What do we need to fix with our organization?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really. I mean, this is not the time to be worrying about anything like that. But it's just like I think that's what it is. Is that
it is?
This
Yeah,
seems
I
like
agree.
this is the moment. This is the guy who should, maybe he's not going to save your team, but he's going to start leading you in a new direction and really help you get out of this nasty rebuild.
Yeah. No, I think Condon, he is definitely a guy who can he can be a very impact player at the big league level, but I think it's there's definitely a lot of pressure on him to be that guy.
Okay. Well, speaking of aircraft carriers, man, so Nick Kurtz. They've said he was 6'5". I could have sworn he was 6'7" or something. Nick Kurtz went to the Oakland A's at pick number 4. My first instinct, I was kind of I'm fond of the Midwestern teams, specifically the Royals and Cardinals. I even like the Rangers. I'm not a diehard of any team, but there's some teams I watch more than others. Being here in Indiana, just kind of the Middle America guy. So seeing him go over to the coast, I'm like, I don't watch A's games. That was my first instinct. I was a little bit, doesn't matter for fantasy purposes. If you want to think about this for fantasy purposes, though, you want the Athletics to stay in Sacramento for a while, because that's going to be a little ballpark for ants, and this is a big man who's going to rip tanks. This guy is going to, man, if they stay in that park, if he's up by next year, Nick Kurtz, what are we looking at, right? There's a major ceiling there. It's going to be a very fun fantasy play in the short term, in my opinion. What do you see here, both in the short term and also in the long term? Because I don't know a lot about him.
Yeah, I look at Kurtz more as one of the higher floor hitters in the class. Very high OBP guy, above average power to all parts of the field. I believe he led NCAA Division I in walks. This kind of fits the mold of really the class of hitters that the A's have targeted. Kind of in like Jacob Wilson last year, that kind of high OBP, high kind of average potential. Very good hit tool, a lot of bat speed. Overall, I've heard some people kind of tab it as like a loser, but I think it's really a fine. I assume he's a guy they were able to get under slot at that pick. I really don't hate the pick at all. I think there's a stigma almost about taking a first baseman that early in the draft, but Kurtz he's probably one of the I think one of the highest floor college bats in the class. I like the fit. I like the pick. But I don't think he quite has that upside of a Condon or a Bazana type guy. I think he's going to be more of like a higher floor guy, but the hit tool is definitely working in his favor.
Yeah, let's. I'm not thinking Jacob Wilson when I look at this dude. Those dudes 6'5", 240, man.
Just in the OP era, that's kind of where they're.
But that's a lot more exciting, because over here, like, I'm saying that Jacob Wilson essentially has to be the white Luis Arias for us to be caring about him in fantasy, just about, unless he surprises with the pop. But Nick Kurtz, dude, it's like he could lose one of his. He could not lose, but he could maybe not hit for as much of average, but he still have great power. He could maybe get on base a little bit less, but he still have, like, as long as he doesn't diminish all three of the power, hit, and on base, elements of his game. Yeah, you still have a very, for fantasy purposes, you have a fun guy. Yeah, and this is you just to touch on what you said about the first baseman not always getting, the most love from the MLB kind of rankings. Those rankings that's when the rankings for real life baseball need to separate for fantasy purposes.
Absolutely.
I will say that defense matters for playing time. But if you have a bat like Kurtz, which is playing no matter where you are,
and you're looking at Oakland, the guy's going to play. There's just this isn't a landing spot for Kurtz where you kind of look at who they have at the big league level and say, like, okay, Kurtz I think he's got average arm strength, but the glove really is not really, I think, where you'd like it to be from your everyday first baseman. But I think the landing spot really works in his favor in terms of kind of getting everyday playing time, and like you said, his bat will keep him in the lineup.
Well, you know, and one last thing is just something that, you know, people don't talk about as much with first baseman. Maybe they don't think is as important anymore, but he is left-handed, which is considered a good thing. Have that right glove at first base, so yeah, that could help him too. Anyway, yeah, I
Maybe.
kind of I'm excited for him. Next up, we had Hagen Smith go to the White Sox. I saw some people, I saw some folks mocking Jack Caglianone. Is that how you say it? Caglianone. Caglianone. That's probably how they say it. Anyway, I had a lot of people mocking Jack to the Chicago White Sox, but that didn't happen. They went with another big old left-handed pitcher in Hagen Smith out of Arkansas. What do you make out of that pick?
This was kind of the one pick I saw, and I'm like, I'm not so sure about this. It's definitely a very high risk, high reward pick. You can't ignore that the guy had Tommy John surgery at 16. Another one before he reaches the MLB is definitely, I think, could limit his upside. But it's hard to ignore kind of what he did as a senior at Arkansas. He had the best average against. His strikeout rate was right up there along with Burns. Fastball can touch 100 miles per hour. Also had potential for 3+ pitches with his fastball, slider, splitter. Overall, I did expect the White Sox to go with a bat just because of how pitching heavy their farm system is, and the young guys they've got coming up. With Thorpe, and now they've got Uriarte in the upper levels. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of a high risk, high reward pick in my eyes.
Man, it's I see where you're coming from, but I mean, here's the deal, right? So when we play in more shallow fantasy leagues, anything under 20 for sure, you're going to typically lean bat over arm. But once you start getting into that 20, 25, 30 team fantasy league, it starts becoming dynasty league, especially you start seeing it more from an MLB GM's perspective, which is, okay, there's 30 teams. You can only have 5 starters, per team. So there's a limited amount of guys who can really be starting pitchers, and then from real life perspective, they get hurt. So if you can get a big body dude like Hagen Smith, who's 6'3", 225, that's great. I did hear that he had TJ back in high school. I think it was his junior year, something like that.
Sophomore year, I believe it was.
Sophomore, okay. Yeah, so it's been a while. And I heard someone was saying there's a 10-year window, and then you kind of have to get it again. So he's got some time. Let's say he's only 20 years old still. So that if there's a concern, I guess that's it. I mean, you could at this point you can say that about basically any pitchers that they're a Tommy John risk at some point or another. But I am excited, man, about what they are doing with their pitching staff. They're trying to they're trying to bring about a new identity, right? And could you imagine? So Schultz, Smith, Thorpe, dude, were you the one you were kind of not sure about Thorpe?
I mean, my concern with Thorpe really stems from there really hasn't been an elite fantasy pitcher with just 2 pitches and a meh fastball since, as you mentioned, Wainwright. So that's kind of really where my concern with Thorpe really more lay, was kind of is the arsenal going to be good enough to really get to really help him maximize his upside. He's definitely proved me wrong his first few starts, but I still have my concerns.
Yeah, I mean, we won't turn this into a Drew Thorpe show like we do every single episode. But I will say, so he has 5 pitches, and I thought he should maybe cut the cutter because it was looking statistically bad on Savant, but he was actually it was making some. I think he got a strikeout with it at least one last game, and he was using it, I believe, as his primary pitch last game, so slightly ahead of the changeup. So that's coming in about. Here's the thing, man. Justin Steele is pitching. The way he's pitching right now, Justin Steele, over those last, I think, 10 games, I believe makes him the best pitcher in the league, like just statistically for that time. He's got 2 pitches, and one of them's sitting at 91.
Fair. Yeah.
So, no, and I scream Steele from the mountaintops, and people are like, okay, yep. No one really disagrees because you can't. So there's like, yep, and then they move on and they forget about him. I'm like, hey. Now, do you want to, for fantasy purposes, is that the sexiest pitcher? Is that the guy with, what are the odds of that happening? I don't know, but I guess here's the deal now. Let's just bring it back to the White Sox draft pick here. That's your maybe 3rd, maybe 4th pitcher is the steady innings eater who doesn't just eat them and get blasted up all the time, but a guy like maybe Miles Michaelis is a 2-time All-Star, and he kind of hit his stride in his mid to late 30s. So if Thorpe can kind of find something like that earlier on, that's so money, that's so good for the White Sox. And so if they can, really just, and then Mason Adams is another guy who's kind of come out of nowhere if you're familiar with him for the White Sox as a prospect. Dude, and here's the other one last thing about the White Sox. I'm not a White Sox fan. I'm starting to sound like one, but they need to trade. They're going to trade Garrett Crochet.
I think this pick makes that even more likely. Going an arm here, yeah.
But then you get some real bats though, right? Bring some bats back. So I like what they're doing, and I've been ripping on them all year. So I'm happy to see some daylight. Now you had hinted at me either at the beginning of this podcast or even off air, but you had something to say about the Royals pick of two-way player for now, Jack Caglianone, as he likes to be called.
Yeah. So my concern is not, I don't doubt the power at all. I mean, the EVs are some of the best in the class. The hit tool's good. My concern is more like if this guy has a bottom percentile chase rate in college, what's going to happen to him in the upper levels of the minor leagues? That's really that's really kind of my big concern. And I really hope I'm wrong. I really hope he can kind of improve upon that. But I feel like we're not going to get like, the power upside and the hit tool upside that he has with just the minuscule chase rates that he has. I think his pitch recognition needs to improve drastically for him to really maximize his upside. So that's kind of really where I'm just but I like the power. I like the hit tool. As I said, he's got some of the best EVs in the class. It's a good foundation, at least. Time will tell if he can improve his pitch recognition.
So, two things. Well, first we'll keep on what you're saying here in terms of pitch recognition and so forth. One of the pundits last night on the MLB network, I missed where he's from. I don't follow the college scene enough, but he was the head of one of these programs or he was the manager. He was from, I think it was a Tennessee school. Regardless, he was talking about facing Caglianone, and he said that last year, so as in 2023, they didn't have to throw him strikes. This year they did. He changed. So I don't know what that means. That's just like one guy saying something. But that would be, hey, if you want to be an optimist on the guy, and the numbers back that up. I mean, he went from a 323 batting average, 389 OBP to a 419 batting average and a 554 OBP. So this is like 100-point jumps plus in the OBP situation. So a lot to be excited about. And then I would shift over. You can address that if you'd like, but if not, let's shift over to the big question: is he a two-way player? Is he the Italian Ohtani?
No, he is not He is not going to be a two-way player. I think really Caglianone's his best value lies in his bat, and I think it would not surprise me as early as this season should the Royals instruct him to focus solely on hitting.
Well, it looks like he's gonna. I just looking from the numbers, he needs to get that control, his command. He needs to get his command under control.
to get back to the average, it is like somewhat. It somewhat lowers my concern about the chase to see the improvements that he made with his average and his OBP, but. You really have to take into account that the jump between college and professional baseball is really a lot bigger. Guy like Spencer Torkelson hit almost 400 in college, and now did really well in the minor leagues, and then he's just not there in the major leagues, and the chase is a big part of that. So I'm not saying Jack Caglianone is the second coming of Spencer Torkelson. I'm saying that when you see really high chase rates in college, there is reason for optimism about how it's going to translate to the minors and eventually major leagues.
Yeah, you know what? To counter that, to build on that, I would actually say, so beyond the ratios, this is even more obnoxious. His improvement. He had in 2023, Jack had 17 walks to 58 strikeouts. This year, 58 walks to 26 strikeouts. So that's an overhaul. Coming into this season, I remember hearing about the kid, and I kind of dismissed him because I saw those numbers last year, and I extrapolated that to the bigs, and I'm like, or to pro ball, and I'm like, no way, no, that's not playing. And then, but just I would say that if he can overcome such a major approach issue already, that's actually a good sign. It's kind of like Hayden Birdsong. There's a few players out there where you see them, they get promoted. Agustin Ramirez has been doing that as a hitter. They get promoted, and this is just like a normal, it should be an obvious thing. You get promoted to a level, you face adversity for like maybe a month or two, or sometimes a whole half season, and then you start making some big improvements. The next year you crush that level. And so to see that already from Jack, because here's the thing, unless you are generational Bryce Harper, whatever, you're probably going to struggle at some point. The question is, how do you do with that adversity?
Yeah. So, reading up on Caglione, you mentioned the strikeout rate. He significantly reduced 18.1% in 23 to 8.2% in 24, lowered his chase and miss rates. It's good to see as well. Another thing I would like to touch on is like the 42% ground ball rate he had this past year at Florida. That's also something, you want to see that down a lot. And it kind of, if he's hitting the ball that much on the ground, it kind of makes you wonder, we know the power he has, but kind of what is the upside to that if he's got a 40+% ground ball rate?
That's a fair point. I'm excited to see what they do with him.
I think it's a very high risk, high reward pick. I was talking to a buddy of mine who works as a scout the other day, and he said Caglione could be a second coming of Aaron Judge. I don't quite see that kind of ceiling for him, but I think it really goes to show just the high reward he has if he can iron out a couple of the holes in his game.
Yeah, 6'5", 250. He's got the size for it. And one last note is just like we have to respect that. Geez, the Royals they're starting to stack some Italians there. They're gonna have some great pasta, some cookouts there in the clubhouse. Vinny Pasquantino, they got Jack Glagianone. They got Frank Mazzucato coming up. They got Carson Roccaforte. What's happening, man? MJ Melendez. It sounds Italian, even if he's not. It's close enough. Anyway, that's says, folks. I'm just not cut out for the host. I want to be the ridiculous color commentator. I gotta be too professional as the host. Let's keep it moving. That was a lot of we kind of hung on there for a while, although we are making great progress, dude. Okay, I'm gonna lead you into this guy. The St. Louis Cardinals went with J.J. Weatherholt, shortstop out of West Virginia. This kid, now the children today, the young whippersnappers out there would say, I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, Owen, would they say that J.J. Weatherholt had drip yesterday? Did he have the drip? Back in my day, they would say he was swag YOLO for 420 Blaze It. But these days, I think the kids have moved on to more fashionable terms. He was cool, man. He was dressed up. He had a huge cowboy hat and a bolo tie.
I did see that. You tweeted that. He had the hat and he had the jacket as well. Yeah. He looked sharp, honestly. He looked straight out of a Tombstone movie scene.
Dude,
minus the cigar, but
you have it. Okay. No, that would have been amazing. So, and because, like I said, I'm kind of fond of some of the Midwestern teams like that. I watched quite a bit of Cardinals games. I wasn't sure because I wanted one of these other big power bats to show up there, but landing him as soon as I saw him, and when you heard him talk too, it's like the anti-Bazana, where this guy he's got personality. He's not that Bazana isn't intelligent or anything like that, but it's always nice when you can have someone who's got that a little bit of character, a little bit of personality. It's good for the fans. Sometimes it's good for the clubhouse. Sometimes it can be a problem if they're too much of it. But yeah, it's kind of a fun character and personality. Then you look under the hood, and I did some research, and I'm like, oh, I can see why some folks thought he could go 1.1 first overall. This is like an all-around dude. This is a if there wasn't a Bobby Witt there, you could maybe start thinking about him arguably as a franchise cornerstone. Am I being crazy? What do you think?
No, I think that's a very
sorry, dude.
Very,
I don't know
very,
what
very
I got to cut myself off because I just confused the Royals. We talked Royals for 10 minutes, and I said Bobby Witt Jr. You know what? So yeah, we'll talk about the Cardinals lineup after. But that's user error, folks. I got too excited.
Yeah, no, I think there's absolutely a slam dunk pick by the Cardinals. Just great pick. I'm shocked that he fell that far. I thought the A's could take him as early as 4. And yeah, he was definitely in the running there for the 1-1 pick. I think if there's if there's another guy in the top 10 with 5-tool upside other than Travis Bazana as JJ Weatherholt, looking at his profile, just he was deemed, one of the best pure hitters in the class. Some scouts have said he's one of the best amateur bats they had seen. He was firmly in that 1-1 conversation entering the year. Injury bumped him kind of down a little bit, but the talent is definitely there. He's got elite contact skills plus runner, very versatile, can hit to all parts of the field. There's no questioning the bat. Really, the only question you look at is like the average arm, and when you look at that, that's great value. That's at that number 7 pick to get a guy that arguably that arguably could have gone 1-1 at that slot. So I think it's a great pick by the Cardinals. I'm excited to see kind of how he develops.
It's funny. I agree with you, and it's funny. I went all that talk about the Cardinals, and then I ended up apparently forgetting that I said something about him being on the Royals and Bobby Witt. Okay, Bobby Witt's obviously the cornerstone of that franchise. Now looking at the Cardinals, his actual franchise, okay, maybe he could be the future cornerstone.
Absolutely. I think
because Goldie and Arenado are not getting any younger.
Yeah, and I think him alongside Mason Wynn could be a dangerous middle infield for years to come. I think with Weatherholt, there's really not many questions there. Not many questions there about the bat. Hits very well. Impressive ball skills. He barrels plenty. Hard hit rate is kind of among the top in college baseball. He's added a lot of power to his frame. Even at his size, I believe he's shorter than Bazana and around the same weight. This is a guy that I think could be a 30-30 guy in the MLB. And that's a guy for fantasy. This is a guy, even though he went number 7 overall, this is a guy who's probably not far behind Condon in that 1-1 conversation in first-year player drafts.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's so fun, man, because we have our opinions now, and then if any of these guys fall flat or explode for their pro debuts the rest of the season, even in a small sample size, that's going to affect a lot of FYPD ranks. And there could be injuries, all sorts of deals. So we'll see what that is. 30-30, man. I feel like that gets thrown around a lot. So I'm excited to hear that. I was wondering if 25-25 is asking too much, because frankly, even if we were to get 20-20 out of this guy with his approach, with his hit tool, it seems like at his peak, he could be a guy who competes for batting titles, which gets a 290, 300 sort of average, which is fantastic. And so it doesn't sound like it doesn't matter, but if 2020 with fantastic ratios is completely acceptable and someone you should really have on your team, I'm interested to see where he's going to go, because Mason Wynn plays such a mean shortstop with that cannon of an arm. It's just so amazing.
I think second base is his long-term home, and I think that really fits. Given the arm is average, not great. I think we'll see him in second base. It might not be. Maybe the Cardinals could want to try and bring him up and try him as a corner outfield, but I think ultimately second base is really where his defensive home is going to be.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm crazy. Usually a third baseman, they're bigger. You want them to bring that boom with the bat, which Mason Wynn doesn't have. He's a smaller guy. I'm thinking in my head though. I'm like, okay, so we could have Burleson maybe step in at first, if when Goldie's gone, and then Gorman's the X factor, because if Gorman becomes good Gorman most of the time, if he's 2/3 of the season, if he's good Gorman most of the time, you're gonna want him there at second base.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, if he keeps on being this volatile guy, he becomes more of a platoon bat. That doesn't matter anymore. But if he's good, then you have him at second. Maybe it becomes Weatherholt at short, and is Wynn with that cannon at third. That's a lot of fun, because you want your third baseman to have that cannon. I don't know. I'm just getting creative here, but it'll be interesting. It always seems to find a way to work out.
Yeah, I think you also have to look at it as moving off from Arenado is really far from a given. They're starting to play much better baseball than they were earlier in the year. They do have a future potential third base guy in Thomas Segasi in the minor leagues, but he's kind of struggling to start this season. So I don't think they're really in any rush in that regard. I do think, if they do move Burleson to first base, I don't think that necessarily pushes like Weatherholt to a corner outfield spot.
No.
Yeah, I think where he's at shortstop, just how good he is defensively there, how strong his arm is, how athletic he is. I think they'll keep him there long term. But yeah, I think Gorman could be a candidate to if he is if you because as we've seen him hit stretches where he hits 400 and then he looks like a guy who couldn't hit high A pitching for a while. So I think if you can even get just like a balance with him, just where he's just not like a guy who looks like a DFA candidate for a fair amount of the season, that'd go a long way. And I think they could move him to third. That's he's played a bit of third, but yeah, overall, I love the pick for St. Louis.
I think you just and with Arenado, I was talking like 2 to 3 years from now, but I think you're correct. Yeah, Gorman to third makes more sense. All right. Great pick there. Moving on to the Angels, and they picked the second baseman out of Tennessee, Christian Moore. The pundits last night kept talking about how intense and how confident this guy is. You could kind of see it there, which is great because he's going to need that confidence when he's when he's in the MLB next week, right? Well, he's the Angels. They'll pick an 18-year-old up. And they'll just send them flying. They do not like to wait. They are the least patient team in the league with their prospects. Christian Moore is, I'm making some jokes here. How close is he to being big league ready, Owen?
I mean that's a difficult question to answer because we've seen the guys that they have rushed up, and Nito, Seanwell, Detmers, they've all kind of had their lumps. Haven't really hit off immediately. But I think really, is it really a given that they kind of rush these guys? Because part of their draft philosophy in the past few years has been like, we need to help Shohei, so we need to kind of get a guy that we can just throw in there. Do they really take that same philosophy now? I think is really the big question. Do they necessarily need to rush him? No, they're not in contention this year. I don't think they really have anything to lose by letting him end this year in the minors. So it'll be interesting to see if they've kind of learned from their previous mistakes and kind of just throwing prospects to the lion's den. But I don't think you can rule out that they throw him in there in September and kind of let him let him get over the lumps at the big league level. I hope they don't for his long-term development's sake, but you can't rule out the possibility. It'll be interesting to see what route they go with him though.
I was thinking of Nelson Rada actually, and I think that's proof that they're not learning their lesson because Nelson Rada is.
Then you look at Caden Donna. They've kept him at Double-A for the entirety of this season, and they had him there a bit last season as well. So I don't know. We'll see. I think with Rada, that was definitely a big mistake to kind of let him try at Double-A as what, an 18-year-old.
Yeah, just for the folks at home who are not familiar with Nelson Rada, he was at low A ball in 2023. They skipped high A for him as an 18-year-old and threw him right into Double-A, way younger than the rest of the competition. And he's struggling mightily, I mean, the batting average is okay, 230, it's like whatever, but 308 OBP, he's striking out a lot. His approach is suffering compared to where it was at. It seems like they should probably, you would hope they would learn from these lessons. But can you tell me a bit more about Christian Moore?
Yeah, no. So one thing that really stands out to me, he's got a very aggressive approach. A lot of strength, good bat speed, power that kind of can play to all parts of the field. I think we could be looking at 25 to 30 home run potential with him. I think one thing he does have kind of some chase concerns. Goes after pitches out of the zone sometimes. Very aggressive hitter at the plate. I think he a lot of people really underestimate his speed. He does have solid speed. Maybe not what we're talking about with Weatherholt, but I think it's also interesting, where his long-term defensive home is going to be. He's gotten some reps at second and third. He could have the athleticism to play shortstop, could end up in, the corner outfield. But yeah, that's kind of those were really the big things that really stood out to me. Very aggressive hitter. The power potential's there. We'll see if he can improve on the chase and the swing decisions.
Yeah,
And,
I think.
the pick as a whole, it really did surprise me that they went with him there. I thought Moore was more of kind of a back end of the lottery type pick.
Mhm.
I could have seen. I thought it would be far more likely they go with, say a Braden Montgomery there, but they have their reasons.
Sure. And I mean, 34 home runs last year might have been one of them. Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, it's pretty good. We'll see, we'll see. And you know what? I'll say this about them, just in general. There's some teams where you get discounts in your FYPD. I've been stacking, and in dynasty leagues in general, I've been stacking up Royals prospects because some people it was you posted that that the Royals don't have. They have not really that good of a farm system, and I think
That's
that's
true. They don't. They don't.
But I think that's changing, and that's the thing. And the White Sox, I'm starting to get on board with the White Sox. But there's some teams where normally I'm trying to stay away from that organization as a whole. But the Royals are ascending at the major league level, and I can name off some Royals for you right now. Gavin Cross is looking like a stud again. They're bringing him back. They got like Gavin. He's a top 50 guy right now. They got.
Yeah, but you have to remember when they drafted Cross, the outlook was potential superstar. Now you're looking maybe above average big league regular. I think that there is a problem with there's at the very least a problem with their development. And the fact that they had to give up their number 2 prospect along with the comp pick to get Hunter Harvey. Any other team that trades for Hunter Harvey, if that comp pick is there, you're getting a back end of the top 10 guy. I don't like the farm system. I don't like the development. Oh, yeah. Do I recognize that they have hit on some players? Yes, absolutely. But I think as a whole, they are a long way from me trusting their development system.
I will just say with Gavin Cross at AA this year, after all that, he had this terrible weird tick fever thing that basically debilitated him last year. Really important to know. This is great because I get into Ross about Gavin Cross all the time. But he's hitting almost 300 this year, a 360 OBP, 8 home runs, 18 stolen bases so far. I mean, we're looking at a guy who could still be like a 25 home run, who knows how many stolen bases kind of guy. More 2020, I'll say 2020 at minimum with decent ratios. That's fun. That's a lot of fun. And so, and if you're gonna look at, I'll give you this. I'll question their pitching development to some extent. Although there are a couple guys like Caderna and Mazzucato who are quietly making improvements, slowly but surely. And then I'll tell you the number one thing if you want a Royals prospect, go out and for some reason they're a catching machine right now. They got Blake Mitchell, they got Carter Jensen who's crushing it this year after a rough. Last year was just rough for them, and then they got the kid from the Dominican coming out, Ramon Ramirez. He actually cracked some top 100s out there. So point being, this is actually, a welcome counterpoint there. But some teams will have this, even if they're improving now, they will have some stains. Stains is a good word. They'll have some stains. Like the Angels have the stain. I got baby here, and she's making sounds. That's the beautiful thing about having babies.
Absolutely.
Anyway, point is, a guy like Christian Moore, even I'm looking at his numbers, they look pretty filthy. As you said, it's a different world. We'll have to see how he does in his pro debut. But often with these teams like that, you can get a discount. You're not getting a discount on Condon because he's so good, but you get a discount in your FYPDs on some guys who are in the wrong orgs. And I guess you'd have to bet that the talent will trump the development problems.
I agree. With at least with the latter point you made there, that with the team that some guys are on, you are going to get a discounted first year player drafts. I think really just simply being on the Angels, we're looking at more as now a potential late first in kind of deeper leagues to now a second round, maybe even late second with just the organization that he's in. But to your point on Cross, you said 25 home run power. We're halfway through the minor league season. This guy has 8. I don't, like I said, when he was drafted, this was, potential superstar, potential franchise changing player, 23 in AA, average age level for that level. It's not like he's kind of blowing away competition. I just don't see it. He's been a good hitter at AA, but isn't this, I feel like this is what you'd expect from a guy at that level, and kind of with the, college bat coming out. after struggling there for 2 years, just with, I'm not
1
saying
year.
I dislike
Mhm.
was
The first year
drafted.
was the first year was pretty good. First year was pretty good. That low A there when he came out of the draft.
Yeah.
I'll give you this.
Fair,
It's been 70 games, so he did miss games this year. But I will grant you the 25 home runs. That might be trickier. He's at least hitting 20. He's got a big frame and he hits the ball hard. But I actually downplayed his stolen bases because I'm not sure. He keeps proving people wrong with that. He had 23, stolen bases last year in his off year.
Yeah.
Right?
Here's also one more thing I'll say about Cross, because I know we got a couple more picks we got to get to.
Mm-hmm.
But the reduction in strikeout rate has also come with a reduction in his walk rate, and it's still like I just don't see the same outlook that I saw when he was drafted that I do now. Now he's striking out at 24% rate, but his 9.8% walk rate is just over half of what he had at the same level last year. I don't think the approach is there. I think the bat is okay, but overall, I just don't. I think it really just shows a flaw in the Royals' development. This guy was drafted 2021. This is a pretty recent miss for them, and
22.
I just 22. Okay, my bad. But yeah, and to acknowledge Mitchell, yes, he's been great so far. They're doing well in that department, but overall, they've had so many high picks, and they still have the bad farm system that they do. That just goes goes a long way for me. Can it change in the future? Yes, absolutely. Maybe Caglianone will be the success story they need to really write in their development history. But
sure.
There is definitely an organizational impact to where a prospect ends up, and going to and KC for me is still one of those where it's one of my less desirable landing spots for a guy.
All right. This is what we bring you here at Dynasty Dingers, folks. After we end the recording, I'll have to go find out where Owen is, book a plane ticket. We'll get into a fight physically. Apparently he's like 6'3", so I got my work cut out. But dude, look at this. I'm getting some gains, so you gotta watch out, son.
I've been hitting the gym every day. I'm getting those gains in myself. Yeah.
Okay, this is getting fun. See, anyone who was starting to fall asleep at the end of a podcast, they're back into it. Now they want to tune in for the brawl.
Exactly.
I love it. Love a good disagreement.
You're a good host. I will say, don't relegate yourself to color commentary. You can do this host thing.
All right, we're firing Matt. Sorry, buddy. You had a kid, and you gotta come back. You get 2 days. So let's. What's up?
Does he need? He can take a paternity leave. We got this under control.
I guess so. All right, we'll have 2 more picks here, and we'll see if we have any other names we want to throw in by the end of it. We got about 10 minutes left in the podcast. Let's do. This one's a fun one. This one might be the most fun pick in terms of we don't know what's going to happen with him, or maybe Owen does. But it's Connor Griffin he's from the Deep South. Mississippi high school kid. He's the first high school player. He's a bat, actually, off the board. He went to the Pittsburgh Pirates, which Matt Morris texted me yesterday. Said, I don't know about that. It doesn't really fit the Skeens window, which is a good point. But when you get a high school kid, what the upside is that you can tap into a lot more there, and it's very funny. The pundits, I love the pundits. Yesterday. Dude, I could totally be one of those guys. Just say ridiculous things. They said, we don't want to compare every shortstop from the Deep South to Gunnar Henderson. That's crazy. He's looking so good. But this kid reminds me of Gunnar Henderson, and here's why. And he just goes into it. The downside to going with these high school kids is that we don't know the floor, though. They don't have as much polish as the college kids in a lot of the situations. Owen, what do you think about Connor Griffin?
Yeah, it definitely kind of goes against the Pirates mold of draftees that they've taken in the past few rounds. But you can't deny the upside. This guy, I think he's got some distance between himself and Bryce Rayner as the best prep player in the class. I think we could be looking at a guy if the development goes right. There are still some questions about how his hit tool is going to translate, but. There's a lot to like about the profile. You could be looking, I think, reasonably at 25 guy with, a pretty good average and, Gold Glove caliber defense. So I think there's a good foundation here. Do I have some questions about Pittsburgh development? Yes. But I think overall, really, the foundation is there. There's a lot to like. This is still a guy I think really the upside can really trump the organization that he's in terms of first year player drafts. This is a guy I'll happily take in the back end of first year player drafts. I'd be fine taking that chance just on the upside alone. But yes, it will be telling, kind of how they develop him, and it will be worth monitoring how his hit tool translates.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is here, I don't know exactly about his defense, but he's got a 65 grade run and a 70 grade arm. So that's going to get you somewhere on the field. They'll get you playing time. That does matter. People, I can't stress this enough. Defense is obviously not scored for fantasy purposes usually, but it could be the difference between a team allowing a player to struggle at the big leagues offensively or sending him back down for seasoning. We saw that last year with Anthony Volpe, and we're seeing it again now this year. Same guy, because he can play a nice shortstop. He's solid out there, and so if Griffin, man, he's 6'4", 215 pounds as an 18-year-old. I mean, you would think. I mean, I'm looking at him. He looks big enough already, but he could get bigger, which could come.
And you mentioned the arm and the speed, but I'd also like to point out on the hit tool side, he's 50 grade hit, 60 grade power. This is kind of you could do a lot worse with a high school prospect. A lot of these guys are really projectable and kind of less of a kind of strong foundation to build upon. But I think really I see the upside. I've heard kind of some rave reviews about him. I like the pick. I'll be honest, I didn't think any prep guy was going to go in the top 10 this year. But if there was any guy that I could have seen going there, it's Connor Griffin.
Okay. All right. Well, high upside, high risk. Hopefully he can fly on up to Indianapolis. You can get on up to Indianapolis as soon as he can so I can see him in person. It's going to be a while, I think. AAA.
Couple years, probably.
Couple of years, probably. Yeah, that's one of those staying teams where maybe you can get a little discount on them because the Pirates, I do not know about their hit and development. My goodness. I saw Henry Davis recently. He still looked pretty rough, man, at AAA. It's not good.
Yeah, I may cut him when Ballesteros gets called up in our league.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's move on to our final member of the top 10, Seaver King. Some folks thought this one was a reach. Did you, Owen? This is the Washington Nationals shortstop.
Yes, I do think it was a reach, and it's not that I dislike the player at all there, but when you look at kind of some of the other guys who were available there, Braden Montgomery, James Tibbs, Trey Yasavich, all would have been better picks there than a guy who I think a utility player is a realistic outcome for him. So I think he's got good speed. He's added some weight since college. He has impressive bat speed. Decent approach. I don't think power wise we're looking more than 12 to 15 home runs per year. And at the top 10, I really don't. I think that's this is the range where you more look for those everyday regular players. I don't think Seaver King is going to be one of those.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know too much about the guy, but it's I can't help but wonder. I'm trying to save a little money on that one. I'm not sure if that really plays so much with a college guy.
I would assume it would have been an underslot pick, but still, I think that at that pick, this is the guy that I think a more comfortable range for him would have been maybe late teens, early 20s.
We're gonna go and do a little segment I haven't done on here for a while. It's called Spray and Pray. We're just gonna go. I'm gonna spray a few names at you, and we're going to. I got a deer. Look up in the top corner of your room there. I think I got that deer, man. That deer is not with us anymore. Oh gosh, he's corny. I'm gonna throw a few names at you. You can talk about them if you want or not. These are some of the names that stood out to me throughout the rest of the first round. Braden and I'm going to just go through them real quick. Braden Montgomery, he was, I believe, some people thought he was going top 10. He went 12th to the Boston Red Sox. There was talk of a big injury last year. I don't know about that injury. Like I said, I'm a little bit behind on the college stuff. So if you could talk about that in a bit, that would be good. The next name that grabbed my grabbed my eye was Trey Savage. I think I agree with you on there in terms of, yeah, what are the Jays even doing? But also lots of opportunity. Vance Honeycutt with the Orioles, big power. Lots of. He seems like a dynamic athlete. But there's a 40 grade hit tool. But if anyone could fix it, could it be the Orioles? I think that's
Maybe.
a fun one. Cam Caminiti, cousin of former, I think it was an MVP, Ken Caminiti from the 90s or something like that. Before my time, before I was really cognizant. Anyway, he was with the Reds. This guy went to the Braves as a left-handed pitcher. I like the bloodlines, and it seems like he's got a great pitch mix. Cam Caminiti, fun name to say. You love when a pitcher goes to the Braves, and then I think that's it for me. Other than maybe Slade Caldwell, I had heard things about him. He ended up with the Diamondbacks. I'm not sure if that's actually a name I should be caring about. Do you have any thoughts on any of those guys, or want to bring up some other names before we sign off here?
Yeah, so absolutely love Braden Montgomery for the Red Sox. This was a guy he was in the conversation as a top 5 pick. He had before he suffered it was a clean ankle break in the NCAA playoffs. I forget exactly who it was against. I think it was in the semifinals. But he's expected to be he's expected to be recovered, I believe, by the offseason. If not sooner. I think I forget what the timeline was exactly for that, but absolutely love the pick for the Red Sox. It seems like kind of draft after the draft, they have that top prospect that just falls into their lap. In 2021, it was Marcelo Meyer. Last year, it was Kyle Teal, and now Braden Montgomery. This is a guy who, even with his injury, was getting mocked, 5-6 picks earlier. So absolutely love the pick for them. You mentioned Cam Caminiti, obviously prep arm going to the Braves. Love that fit. If there's any organization that is going to maximize a prep arm at that point in the draft, it's got to be the Braves. Yasavage, I think that's great value at number 20 for the Blue Jays. This was a guy I had a lottery grade on. So to get him there, even if they may not have the best development history, you gotta like what he brings and kind of the value at that slot. You mentioned Caldwell as well. I'd also like to bring up Ryan Waldschmidt. I think who the D-backs also got great haul with their first 2 picks. And just at the back end of the class, I think he might be my favorite outfielder in the class, not named Charlie Condon or Braden Montgomery. So to get him, and I believe it was the Comp A where they took him, just great value with both of those picks right there that they had. And you also and Vance Honeycutt. Great athlete. It reminds me a bit of a current Orioles outfielder, Cedric Mullins. If they can develop that hit tool even a little bit, the power is there, the defense is there. I mean, there's really a lot to like, and I think he could end up being the steal of the draft if all goes well.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I think we just killed this thing. This was good, man. I'm getting hot and sweaty. It is like 100 degrees out here. I'm in a sunroom. I try not to smoke up my house too much, with kids around and all that. Otherwise, I have to go. I don't know if you've ever seen me in that closet in there.
Yeah. You were there the first episode we did.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm out here sweating a bit, but it's a little bit better for ventilation. I appreciate you coming on here, man. I think we killed it. I think we just knocked Matt out of a job, unfortunately. But here's the thing about college. Just one last thing here is just what going forward, folks. These we're not even ranking things, but this discussion, it's going to be so funny to look back, so fun, I would say, to look back on, because you just look at the MLB draft from last year. I mean, things change so fast. Like I said, whether it's injuries, whether it's one guy, remember Dylan Cruz went from can't miss, maybe should have been 1.1 to now he's getting there, but it's taken a little bit of time. You got a guy like Max Clark going ahead of Wyatt Langford, who Clark's looking good. He's looking fine at low A as a kid, but Langford is starting to become the spark for the Rangers having a shot at all to make playoffs. And then for fantasy purposes, people were, how many leagues picked Yamamoto over Paul Skeens? Almost all of them. Yeah.
I got Paul Skeens at number 6 in our first year player draft we did there. Yeah, because it was Yamamoto, Cruz, Langford, Clark, and Imanaga that all went over him.
Yeah, man. So I would say, yeah, last year's class, they're still like they're looking
And,
really
and,
good.
and I think it really goes to show the stigma that people have with organizations with bad developmental histories. I think that's part of the reason that kind of allowed him to fall, because it's everyone when Skeens got drafted, there was definitely that fear. If any organization can ruin him, it's the Pirates. But generational arm at number 6 in my first year player draft, I'll take that.
Yeah, and then I mean, yeah, exactly. And it was like crazy. So he got drafted, and there was all this hype, and then all it took was like he pitched like a couple innings, and you had some folks out there who were looking too far into things. Apparently, oh, I don't like it. What was it? His fastball is flat. It's too flat, or
Flat
there
arm
was
syndrome is, I think, what I heard thrown around a lot.
There was something weird, and that did, I heard that being whispered, and I think, frankly, it was just people being nervous about pitchers in general over bats. And this was a good a good example of, okay, sometimes you got to risk it. Sometimes there's just guys who are and it's funny because no one wants to say generational until it looks like they're generational, and which is probably the smart way to go. But folks, that's what I'm trying to say is that there's going to be some guys, and there's guys who come out of nowhere right now. There's guys who went way later in 2023 already.
Absolutely.
Who are crushing it right now.
Christian Campbell.
Yeah.
My guy. Love that guy.
Absolutely.
If we can go to a little over today, I think it'd be good. Could we get into like some draft losers and winners? I think we've got a few.
We'll give it 5 to 10 minutes, and we'll let our hostage audience goes. Who are your winner and losers?
Okay, so I've actually I've seen this one thrown around a little bit, but for the winner, you gotta put the Red Sox on there with Braden Montgomery. It's not often you're getting arguably a top 5 talent in the draft outside the top 10. So I think that one really stands out to me. Also, I think the Blue Jays with Trey Yasavage, that was also just a great pick for them. Can't really go wrong there. Orioles with Vance Honeycutt, as we mentioned, really like that pick as well. And you gotta like the Rockies haul from this draft. They got Condon with their first pick, then they kind of circle back and get Brody Brecht in the Comp A. Probably not the best landing spot for him, but you really got to like what he brings to the table. If he can kind of iron out those command issues, he's got just absolutely electric stuff. Trying to think. I'm sure I'm missing on somebody here. I actually like the A's haul. Of Nick Kurtz and Tommy White, who I actually had a late first round grade on. They got him. I think it was like pick number 40. They got him. There are probably reasonable questions about kind of getting those two guys, kind of really pretty similar skill sets, offensively at least. And then White, he's very defensively limited. The bats really got to carry him. But this dude just raked for 3 years at LSU, and just I was actually shocked that he didn't kind of get in the first round there. So I've seen the A's kind of thrown around as a loser. I would actually put them in the winner category.
Yeah, Tommy White guy. He's that Tommy White guy. Just from what I was watching the whole thing last night, and Tommy White, he looked like a fun guy. Saw him for 5 seconds, right? And they're talking about his swagger and all this, that, and the other, and how he's just a ball player. And I saw him. He's kind of fat, isn't he? He's like he's just like chunky. He's just like a guy with the long hair and the beard. Yeah, he's like a guy you want to root for. So the A's are gonna hopefully give their fan base something to root for after they leave town.
Yeah, no, and for my losers, I gotta say Brody Brecht was one of my favorite kind of second tier arms coming into the class, but landing in Colorado is really just not a great. He was a guy that I would have put kind of firmly in the second round of first year player draft. Now we're probably looking. I would probably take him probably after a guy like Dollander at this point, and so I was hoping that he would kind of land in an organization like the Braves or the Brewers or the Twins, or late in that first round, or maybe even the Rays. Really kind of land in a great organization, because the stuff, there's a lot to like. The command is definitely a big question mark, and I got to throw the Marlins in here. I really did not like that PJ Morlando pick. This is an organization with just a horrible track record of developing high school bats. Yes, it's a new regime there, but I mean, this to me is kind of classic case of, having not learned from your previous mistakes. Yes, the upside is there with Morlando, but I'm more to believe it when I see it with that class. I think Braylon Payne to the Brewers at number 17 under slot, that was a pick that really caught me off guard. Didn't even have him as a first rounder. So to see him go there, definitely kind of surprising to me. I think the Brewers could have done better with that pick. And then I think you gotta look at Chase Burns at number 2. Just it's such a hitter friendly park. There's definitely an uphill battle going there as a pitcher. If the stuff can hold up, yes, we are looking at maybe a Hunter Green or a Lodolo type outcome for him. But I definitely think that had he landed, I would like him more even if he landed in like maybe number 4 to the A's or number 5 to the White Sox.
Man, I mean, those are. I think you're pretty much on the ball there. I'm not going to go in with my own list. Here's the deal for me for the most part, folks at home. Pay attention. This is not the NFL. Pay attention to the signing bonuses when they get released.
And especially now with day 2, we're going to see a lot of teams go over slot for those 3rd and 4th round guys.
Yeah. So some names that I saw last year, guys who went either at the late first round or beyond, guys like Thomas White or Travis Sikora, a couple of the first guys that come to my mind. Aiden Smith, even later, I think 4th round, maybe 5th, 4th round. I think.
4th, I think, was Smith.
Yeah. So these guys, they weren't like magically on my radar. I looked at their signing bonuses, then I dig in. Oh, those are really cool guys. They, if this was an NFL style draft, they'd be going sooner. But they're just being ignored or overlooked in a lot of drafts. I was saying from the get go, Thomas White seems to have similar upside to Noble Meyer, way cheaper cost for fantasy purposes. Even their signing bonuses were barely apart, and so that money counts, guys. Teams put their money where their mouth is. You pay attention, is what I would say.
Absolutely.
Going forward. So we have more analysis to figure out in the coming weeks. I will just say I think JJ Weatherholt, he might have just bailed the Cardinals out because Jordan Walker is freaking me out a bit. I don't know what's going on there. Victor Scott is just, they've messed up both those guys. As far as I can tell, they've messed up their development a little bit. Maybe they come around and they figure it out, but we're getting to concerned o'clock. Chase Davis, even from last year, was terrible. So bad. I think he was struggling at low A this year. He's starting to finally turn it around.
His swing adjustments have gone a long way for him.
Yeah,
but still, remains to be seen how it's going to go in the upper levels of the minors.
But
this is a college.
But getting a guy like JJ Weatherholt, I would say falling to you pretty well at 7 is, whoa, we got bailed out. Especially he just had, as soon as I heard him talk, I'm like, oh yeah, these people are gonna love him. He's dressing like a cowboy. St. Louis is pretty much middle America. A lot of their fans, a lot of fans here in Indiana. So yeah, there's going to be. Yeah. I think he's a perfect cornerstone, and I think they got bailed. Their farm system and their bats, especially Sagaci's still struggling too. So they just got bailed out. They got bailed out by him, maybe, and also Alec Burleson. There's a couple things working in their favor. You might see the Cardinals avoid their having to blow things up there completely.
Yeah, and one more thing I would, just to go back to the winners, another organization that it feels like year after year we're just shocked at who the Rays end up with at the draft. But man, I love their class this year so far. Theo Gillen, their first rounder, he reminds me a lot of Evan Carter. Great approach. I think he could be really an impact back for their system. And then you look at who they got in the second round. The shortstop Tyler Bell. I think second or third they got him. I think it was late second, end of the second. They got him at pick number 66. He was in kind of the 40 range on a lot of prospect rankings. I feel like that's great value right there. And there's a solid chance he's a switch hitting shortstop. There's a solid chance he sticks there long term. So you gotta like the Rays class so far. As I'd assume going under slot for a guy like Gillen, and then over slot to sign a guy like Bell at that point in the draft.
Yeah, I'm still so scared of Rays prospects because I don't trust them. And it's like they're stained for me in the other weird way, in that I just don't know.
I want to hear this. Why are they? It's just timeline.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a guy like Curtis Mead is the ultimate Rays prospect for me. Like, he looks so good all the way up. Came up, did okay. They kind of put him up and down. Now we just don't know what he is. They have no problem platooning a very capable player who would be starting full-time elsewhere. They're just kind of, you don't know what you're dealing with. I mean, even before Camaro's injury, they're just taking their time with him, which is probably smart, but for fantasy purposes, I just don't know. Know what's going on here.
I have this kind of philosophy when it comes to Rays prospects. As a prospect, I'll be all over them, but they are guys that I will look to kind of capitalize on their performance, because they do have, the Rays don't, respectfully, they don't give a shit about our fantasy teams. You know,
Yeah.
they platoon guys. You know, it's just not after they debut the big league team. It's just you're not going to get maximum fantasy value from them. So Rays prospects are they'll guys I'll be all over all the way up until they make their debut, and then after that, it's like okay, what can I get in return for this guy? You know, I did that with Curtis Mead. I have Braden Taylor, who in a couple leagues, who I may look that way again if he continues to hit. Trey Morgan is another guy. It's just from a fantasy perspective, they're just not the best organization to be in.
Agreed. It sounds like we agree. We both agree on that one.
Developmental wise, excellent. But once they debut, once they get to the big league, it's like there's a real shot they play in like maybe three of the games in a week. You know, it's just not kind of what you're looking for. You know, they have a knack for developing great players, not so much great fantasy players.
Well, as you may be able to tell and our viewers at home, I'm getting progressively sweatier here, and our time is up to 1 hour 15. Owen, do you have any final words for the audience, and where can they find you online?
Yeah, so you can follow me on X. It's at @HN_Owen Hurd. As I mentioned earlier, I run a weekly periodical for Scout the Statline down on the farm. So keep an eye out for those on the Scout the Statline website, and they'll be posted on their official account. With the draft, once the draft is in the books, I will have an updated top 100 coming up with all the recent draftees. So keep an eye out for that as well. I will continue to try and keep up the prospect analysis. Got a summer class kicking my ass a bit right now, but we're doing the best we can. You know, thank you all, everyone who's tuned into my work so far, and thanks for having me on, Doc.
No problem. I'm your Huckleberry.